What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here with me, Sean Sheehan, on Sherdog.com, and I am back with your top 5 bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. And I'll tell you what, this show is going to become interesting over the next few weeks because, this is the last UFC event of the year, but we have some very interesting events coming up. We have a KSW next week. We have Octagon as well that'll see us through Christmas, and then we start back, I suppose, into the into the UFC and all of that again for next year, as well as the bets for the year. Hopefully we have it in early January as well. So looking forward to all of that. It's always fun, and also we'll have a recap of the year, I suppose, and the bets for the year as well, because they went pretty well, if memory serves me correctly. So we'll have a look back at all of that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's talk about today first. So we obviously have the PFL Europe finale, which is a very, very interesting card. I have a preview of that already out, so please check that out. Obviously, there's big UFC as well this weekend over in Florida, and there's a boatload of other MMA on as well. Also, there's Invicta and Brave and other things as well. I actually have a preview for all of that out as well, so please check that out on the Sherdog.com website or on the YouTube as well for all of that. But I'm going to give you my top 5 bets today. Before we do that, as always, let's look back at last week. And last week was a pretty good week for only the fourth time this year. A Flier hit, and was a pretty good one. Mitchell wins by TKO KO at plus 700. Now this dropped a little bit in certain books. I saw certain books that had a plus 600. In the book I use, it was we'll go with plus 550 for the sake of the American odds. 11-2 I think it was here. So, but the actual I won't say the one I use, but just for no free ads or whatever. But it had the fight to in via knockout at plus 600. So I had a little bit of a bet in that, and as I said over Twitter, it paid for my wedding shoes. So I have an upcoming wedding. So thank you to Mitchell for that. So that was a pretty good bet. So I'll take that. And then we went 2-2 with the other bets. One of my worst bets of the year, I have to say, Timba Garimbo. The closer that fight got, the more I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I gave that as a bet. And then the fight happened, and yeah, that was my bad on that one. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible pick. The other loss wasn't as bad a pick. Obviously, giving Gary a plus 310, which, if we're betting prices, that what a bet that was. To be fair, like, as I said, he was 2 punches away from winning the fight 4-1. Very, very close to winning that fight. So that line was way off. I think most people would agree with that in hindsight, if not coming into it. So interesting. And in the other two, we had 2 winners. Reyes wins by knockout at minus 150. And Pantoja Asakura won start the 5th round at minus 154, which, that's one of those bets you look at as well and go, oh, that's not right. Both of these lads go at it at a pace. They're finishers, and I was happy with that. The Reyes one, I was a little more unsure of. That Reyes bet, though, I'll tell you this, if we're talking about futures, we all know what happened with Anthony Smith, and a very emotional fight, I suppose, after his coach and his friend passed away. And that was kind of, I suppose, the main talking points coming out of it. If we're looking at it from, and this is maybe a bit, we shouldn't be doing this, but we are a betting show. But looking at it from the betting point of view, I actually don't think Reyes looked that good. I thought he looked better in his last fight. To me, this showed more signs of Reyes maybe not being as good as maybe, the comeback would suggest here in his career. And I think if they give him a good matchup in the next one, like, please people remind me in the comment section as well, because I'll forget. But I might need to write that down in my notes. It depends who he's fighting. Like, you put him in there against someone like good, and I probably think the line will be pretty favourable to his opponent, and I think I'll be going for that, to be honest. So let's watch the space with that one. So the record overall, we've passed 100 good bets this year, which is, I must say, that's pretty good. Can't fault that. 101 out of 188, which is a pretty good percentage as well. And then we've hit 4 flyers, which is not great out of 43. It feels like that 43 number is low. Like, how many? There's like 3 weeks left, so that'd be 46 weeks. I've done every week. Like, well, maybe there's a few early weeks where there was no MMA where I didn't do it, and I know there was 1 week where we didn't have a betting show because there was no mixed martial arts. But yeah, maybe it does make sense because there was a couple of weeks I didn't do flyers as well, so probably does just about add up. But that 4 out of 43 is horrendous. But 101 other bets, we'll take them all day long. Right, let's get into our bets for this week. And I'm going to start off with the PFL Europe. I have 1 bet for the PFL Europe, and then I have 4 bets from the UFC. But I'm just going to give you my picks for the PFL Europe as well, because people would want them. So let's do it. My official first bet though from PFL Europe, and I've decided to go with kind of a few better prices this week. I know. Maybe I'll retract that because I did kind of pull out a one bet I had. I had 2. My Flier is plus 450 this week, and I had another plus 400 bet, but I pulled out of it. I took it away. But anyway, first bet, Alexander Luster at plus 200 in his fight with Lewis McGrillen Evans. This to me is, I said it at the time, so these guys both fought on the same night back in September. Alexander Luster put on a phenomenal performance, very quick performance against Julian Lopez, and Lewis McGrillen Evans had what, in my opinion, is the fight of the year against Dean Garnett at PFL Europe 3, the 2024 playoffs card. And they faced off afterwards. It was a great face-off. Lewis McGrillen Evans was kind of piping blood and doing the BJ pin, licking his gloves and stuff afterwards. It was just a great scene all around. And from that moment on, I was like, this is the fight for the rest of the year I'm kind of most looking forward to. And I don't, there's been some great fights and some massive, massive fights, but this to me as like, this is the hipster fight of the year, in terms of what we're looking forward to. I don't think we'll bypass McGrillen Evans Garnett, but I must have, so it's 3 months since that fight, or a little bit less, and that was a very tough fight for Lewis McGrillen Evans. And that's part of my thinking here for picking Alexander Luster. The other part of it is, I think McGrillen Evans is a really, really fun fighter, but a good fighter as well. Beating Dean Garnett, beating Mateusz Zarowskis. He's been in there with Wesley Maya, went to decision with him, lost that, and he's had a good few PFL fights now at this stage. He has fought better guys and beaten better guys than Luster. There's no doubt about that. Like Luster's, who was his best opponent was probably Julian Lopez, or Carabullet in his last fight before that is a good fighter as well. But before that, you'd have to probably go looking deep into the Sherdog annals to find out how good those lads are. So I think with that said, right, there's 2 things to that. Luster is less distinguished, I suppose, in terms of opponents, but also hasn't taken as much damage, and hasn't, especially recently. Obviously, that last fight for McGrillen Evans was very, very damaging. I'm sure he had a good bit of recovery after that. Did he get any good, injuries? And good is the word, bad injuries, I suppose is the word. Bad, not good. After that, that will take its toll, when you have to come back relatively quickly, because it's not that you're coming back relatively quickly, it's that you're coming back to training relatively quickly. And maybe if you can't get back to training quickly, is that going to affect you coming into this fight? So that's that. The other part of it is, I just think the technical ability is going to be a factor here, because there's 2 ways this fight can go, right? If it turns into like a technical fight, I think Luster will win that all day. If it turns into a war, I think McGrillen Evans will win that all day. But I also think there is and I said there's 2 ways, but here's the third way, maybe the in-between bit, where McGrillen Evans tries to turn it into a war, or tries to get the fight to his way, and just gets picked off in the process. And I'll give you an example of a fight that I think it could look like. Gilbert, in parts. Gilbert Melendez versus Diego Sanchez. Like, apart from the big uppercut that Diego Sanchez landed and a couple of other things, like if you maybe leave the most exciting bits aside, right? Gilbert Melendez just picked off Diego Sanchez as he went insane. Now, it's one of my favorite fights of all time, so this is not me downgrading that or anything, but and I'm taking out some of the best bits, right? That's the fight I believe we could kind of see here, where McGrill and Evans is kind of rushing in at times and Luster is picking him off. I think the thing with McGrill and Evans as well, and I give great credit to him, and I think this is, part of his game. I think, like, we see the Justin Gaethje type of fighter, right? Who's a madcap forward-going fighter, and that's what McGrill and Evans is. But Justin Gaethje adjusted his game and became more of a technical fighter later in his career, and I think McGrill and Evans is trying to do that. Like, he tries to throw feints and he tries to set things up. It's just, I think his nature takes the better of him sometimes. He's like, I've thrown 3 feints now, I'm going to have to throw a punch next. I can't keep throwing these feints. And his opponent knows what's coming, and sometimes they're able to pick him off, and that's why, he and Dean Garnett both got knocked down multiple times in their fight. But when you're fighting against a guy like Luster, who is so technically good, or Luster, sorry, I should be calling him, I think that his jab is phenomenal. I think it's going to be a big issue, and also, like, I haven't even mentioned it yet, how good Luster is on the ground. Really good on the ground. 3 of his last 4 fights in submission, and he's inverted triangle arm bars, which inverted triangle arm bar. I'd have to picture that in my head, and a couple of rear naked chokes in there as well for good good mission. So yeah, I like Luster in this fight. I think he hits really hard as well. I think McGrill and Evans is going to have to turn it into madness, but I feel like Luster is a guy who, if you try to go forward and go mad at him, he's just going to pick you off. So that is the first bet of the week, and that is the first bet from PFL Europe. Let's talk about some of the other prices on PFL Europe. The main event is Lazy King, Abdullah Abdurrahimov against Lorando Strapoli. Plus 750 for Strapoli. The Lazy King is minus 1200. I think that line is way off. Now, I'm definitely picking the Lazy King, but I think that should be closer to maybe minus 600-700, maybe minus 500 even. I'll tell you what, MMA, my good friend Graham McDonald says to me often, if a fighter is over plus 700, always bet him, always back him, because that's MMA. That is MMA. You never know in MMA. You never know. So, if I was putting a bet on that, it would definitely be for Staropoli at that price. But I doubt that price stays the way it is, to be honest. And also, just to say as well, I'm recording the show a little bit late because these prices were very late coming in, so they could very much change as they go. I want to talk about one of the other title fights, but the other two for the betting so far that just come out are very, very close. Paulina Wisniewska is the favorite over Skitizi. She is coming in at the first odds that came in. Again, these could change very quickly. She's minus 260 to plus 200. Again, very, very interesting odds. I think how good Skitizi looked against in her last fight against Chanel Dyer, I think she has a chance here, but I just think Wisniewska is too tall and too big, and again, that's a price I think that'll probably extend, and I could see her being maybe minus 500 or 600 against those opening odds. The odds for Michelle and Zindelli are closer. That's basically a pick'em fight. And again, I talked about it in the press, in the preview, that I really don't. I'm not too sure on my pick for that one. I'm probably just leaning Michelle based on experience in that. The line I was really excited to see, and I think this is just about how I thought it would be, is Connor Hughes and Jacob Kazuba. Minus 250 for Kazuba, plus 200 for Hughes, and I think they got that exactly right. Like, Kazuba should be favourite based on what he's done and based on how good of a fighter he is, but at the same time, I think Connor Hughes deserves a lot of adulation for what he's done over the last year. Lost to Dylan Tuke, looked good before it, looks very good since. And I think for a guy like that, the ability to make adjustments and ability to improve between fights has to get him a price like that. It really, really, really has to get him a price like that, because he, he could turn up and he could do something that, you are really not expecting out of him. He really, really, really could. So I would think about that bet. If you watch Conor Hughes and you think his improvements have been enough, that plus 200 is not a bad price. But also, if you think Kasuba is just way better, that minus 250 is not a bad price either. So I don't know how much I'm helping you here, lads. My apologies, but do you know what? I think I nearly touch on Hughes at that. Nearly touch on Hughes on that. If it was if it was plus 250 or maybe plus 300, I think I'd definitely go with it. But yeah, that is that's a very interesting price. I tell you, that's a very, very interesting price. I think the thing about Kasuba is, right, he and I said this in the preview. He's a very Leon Edwards type of fighter. Very good technically. Doesn't maybe blow you away in all aspects. It was just very good. Whereas Conor Hughes is getting better in all areas. He's big power and he's very good on the ground and everything like that. And offensively, anyway. But yeah, I think Kasuba definitely deserves to be favourite. And other than that, there's some big prices. Patrick Habirora is a highly, highly thought of amateur coming through. Who's 4-0 now as a professional. This guy looks really, really, really good, and he's a big favourite here. Minus 700. You know what? That minus 700 is probably a good price on him. Some of the undercard fights, Mikael Gure is the minus 500 favourite over Mamadou Lamine Sen, and then Matthias Dragugan is a minus 1200 favourite over Yanis Shatu there in that one. So those are the PFL bets for the week. Right, let's go to the UFC, and I'm going to start with the main event. And I have a feeling this fight is going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people think. And my bet for this is minus 135. Buckley versus Colby goes to a decision. That's going to be my bet here. I think Colby knew what he was doing by taking this fight. I think he realizes that Buckley is, a guy a lot of people are talking about, but at a stage in his career where he is on a really good run and fighting him is never going to look better. And no disrespect to Joaquin Buckley or anything, but if he had fought Ian Gary, or let's say he fought Shavkat or Jack Della Maddalena or any of them, he's probably going to be a big underdog for a lot of those fights, and he could lose. So you're getting him on a 5-fight win streak. He's beaten Wonderboy, Vicente Luque and others in there, Andre Filo. And if you beat him now, it looks like a very good win for you. Whereas is Buckley as good as that suggests? He lost to Chris Curtis a year and a half ago. Lost to Mavov, and I know he's coming down in weight and everything like that from before. But and Colby is obviously on a very bad run, considering, the only person he's beaten in the last 4 years is Masvidal, who is, not the greatest fighter in the world. Lost to Leon Edwards, obviously, and Kamaru Usman. Both went to a decision. But, almost all of his fights are going to a decision. Even the ones that are finishing are, late in round 5. The last time he had a fight that ended before round 5 or didn't end in a decision, didn't end in the last round or didn't end in decision, it was 2015. Which is that's a crazy stat. That is a crazy stat. 2015 and that was when he lost. So when was the last time he won? Let's have a look back. In 2014, in his UFC debut. Wow, that is that's pretty crazy. I might tweet out that stat later on. So if that doesn't tell you that this is a good bet, I don't know what is. So yeah, I think, and let's have a quick look at Buckley as well. Like, Buckley has more finishes, but eight of his fights have gone to a decision. He has a lot of knockouts, obviously, but a lot of his fights have gone a little bit longer recently. 2 of his last 4 have gone to a decision as well. Yeah, I like this. I like this bet. I think the fight goes long. Minus 135, I think, is a pretty good price. So there is that bet. Just who I think wins the fight. And just to have quickly to look at the prices as well. If you gave me a little bit of a better price on Colby, I'd probably go for it. But still, I probably would plus 230 go for Colby. at that price. Now, I'm very unsure of this fight, really. I'm very unsure of this fight. And maybe because of that, maybe I should have just pulled the trigger on Colby at plus 230. But this is maybe a little bit of a safer bet. You know, after we hit a flyer last week, let's save our money a little bit this week and go a little bit safer. But I like, after I say I'm giving bigger prices. But anyway, yeah, I'll tell you what, I wrote down some of my bets like 2 days ago and I changed them. And one of the bets was Colby at plus 230. It was Colby at plus 230, and that was, as I said, one of the bets I changed. I just think Colby might have enough for him in terms of pushing him against the cage. In terms of, like, Colby's boxing is not as bad as people make out. He's not, obviously not the biggest finisher or the biggest power puncher or anything like that. But he's a good enough jab. Like, he stayed in there with some very good fighters, striking for long periods of fights. So, you know, can he do that with Buckley? I think he probably can. And can he, like, tire Buckley out, push him against the cage, take him down? I think he probably can as well. So, yeah, that price on Colby. Sixth bet of the week. Colby plus 230. Right, next bet. Very same. I'm going for the main event and the co-main event. I'm going for a Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo to go to a decision. And I've a bit of maybe a tiny bit of a backwards reasoning for this. Cub has had probably a better run at this stage of his career than maybe a lot of people would have thought of, and that's no disrespect. You know, he's 41 years of age, but, like, you know, his last 4, he's won 2 of them. Lost Andre Feely and he lost Jonathan Martinez and was leg kick KO. People remember that, but, you know, one decision over Hakeem Daoud, which was a great win, and Darren Elkins was a very good win as well. Quarantillo, then I suppose at this stage of his career, you would expect it to be better for him. He's 36 now as well, which, you know, he's getting on a little bit, but, you know, he had a good run there for a while at the start of his UFC run, and, you know, since I suppose the pandemic, he hasn't been as good. You know, win one, lose one, kind of the same as Cub. But I don't think he will look at his 2 losses in his last 3 as much a job security as a lot of people would. And for that reason, I think Quarantillo is going to make this fight, or attempt to make this fight, a little bit safer. 3 rounds as well. Let's remember in the co-main event. And look, Cub is a very good fighter, but not the biggest finisher in the world recently as well. He has a lot of finishes in his career, but he's gone to decision 16 times as well. The last time, you know, he had a finish was, I suppose, back in 2021 against Darren Elkins. His last 3 haven't gone there. And, you know, Quarantillo's 8 fights in his career as well go to decision. So there's plenty of decisions in there. And I don't know, I just have a feeling like that. But Cub, I think Cub will go for it, right? I think Cub, at this stage of his career, he doesn't really care, right? I think he'll go for the finish. But I think Billy will know that and will hold back a little bit, maybe try to get a few takedowns, maybe try to push him against the cage. You know, Cub's record at one stage, he'd only ever been submitted in losses, I think, in finishes anyway. I think it was like 7 submission losses. You know, I think, is Quarantillo good enough to submit him? You know, he's won 5 himself. Maybe he is, but I think also he will back himself to do that and maybe try to get the fight to there. But I think Cub might be good enough against someone like Quarantillo to survive. So I think this is going long. I know, again, could be very, very wrong here, but I like the fight to go to decision at minus 105. Right. The next one is not to go to decision, the quite opposite. And the next one is Joel Alvarez to win in either round 1 or round 2 at plus 102. Now, I went back and forth on bets in this fight because I really like this fight. I have a lot of respect for both of these guys, and I like their styles, especially Joel Alvarez. You know, he's 21-3, which is a great record. The only guy he's lost in the last 5 years is Arman Saryukin. You know, before that it was Damir Ishmagulov, and that's the only fight he's lost since 2015. Like, this guy is a real top fighter. You know, beating Elvis Brenner, Mark Casey, Thiago Moises, Alexander Yankov, you know, Joseph Duffy and others as well. This guy is a real top fighter, and I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for it. You know, Drakkar Klose as well. He's 36 now, 15-2-1. You know, he's on a 4-fight win streak, which, you know, does he get enough credit for that? You might forget that a little bit. I think that the problem, I think, with Klose here, and I always call him Klose because the Miroslav Klose is probably just Drakkar Klose. I think he's going to be technically beaten by someone like Alvarez. And I think like Alvarez is, and sometimes when, and I'm talking about striking technically, sometimes that can happen and you can say, okay, maybe you can take him to the ground, maybe you can beat him there, but not with Alvarez. He has 17 submission wins. Like the fact that Alvarez has only 4 knockouts always blows my mind. His striking is so good. And again, maybe he's not the most powerful guy in the world, but his striking is absolutely phenomenal. And I think, I was looking at the knockout price here. It's not great. It's really not great. But I think a knockout could be, could be on the cards here. But that's why I kind of hedged the bets there. We go with round 1 or round 2. Could get a knockout. Could get a submissions plus 1 or 2. I think that's a good price. And I think it looks better. It's a better price because the fact that Close has won his last 4. There have been moments in those fights against fighters I think that are not as good as Alvarez, where Close has had issues. Even the Selecki fight where he ended up slamming him, but in my opinion, knockout of the year from last year. He was in trouble for bits and pieces of that fight. It didn't go that long, but you get what I mean. And again, like Silva, Selecki, Garcia, Brandon Jenkins, are any of them as good as Yoel Alvarez? I don't think so. I think this is a step up in competition again. I think it's a little bit reminiscent of the Beneil Dariush fight, where, again, that reaction, wasn't it, the Joe Rogan, John Anik one? I think it could be something like that, and I think Alvarez is going to get him out of there. So that's bet number 4. And then the flyer of the week is a pretty simple one. I'm going for Vitor Petrino to win in round 2 at plus 450. He is fighting Dustin Jacoby, and he's on a real good run at the moment. Obviously, 11-1 is Petrino, and he has a real good run at the moment. He lost his last fight to Anthony Smith, but 7 knockouts in his career. Looked real good coming in there. Won the decision against Tyson Pedro as well, which I suppose he needed to go a little bit longer. Whereas Jacoby at the other side of it, then lost 4 of his last 5. Kind of amazing. He's still in the UFC. Gets knocked out a good bit. Let's be honest. Well, it gets finished a good bit. Let's put it that way. But 9 losses in his career. I think he's one of those guys as well where his striking is very good, and he knocked out Kinney and Chuku, and look how good of a fighter he is. Knocked out Dawoon Jun as well. I think maybe he banks in it a little bit too much. And he's willing to get in there and throw it back. I think what he does, right, he wants a technical fight and then boom, I'm going to land a big one. But he goes in there with some, and it's maybe more of a kickboxing thing, but he goes in there with some maniacs, some MMA maniacs, and then they're just throwing bombs at him, and he catches one. And I don't know. I feel like this fight is that. I feel like he's going to just catch a bomb here off of Petrino. But also, I think I love, well, when you see fighters who have lost 4 of their last 5, right? They're not going to give it away early, and that's why I'm going for round 2 here. I feel like he's going to play on the outside. He's going to try to jab him up, and it's going to have to get Petrino maybe to the corner to go, here, Vitor, let's go. Let's get going. And again, this is a flyer plus 450, so, feel free to go at this with a bit of, a bit more sense than maybe the other bets. But I feel like that's what the first round is going to look like. I think Jacoby is going to keep him at arm's length. The second round, Petrino is going to come out fishing for the big knockout, and I think he'll probably end up getting it. So those are the 5 bets for the week. Let's have a look at some of the other bets. There's as I said, there's a lot of cards this weekend. There's an EFC card. Nothing really sticks out to me on that one. I know, Igor Kabesi is one of their best guys. There's been a lot of talk about him. He's a minus 1,000 favorite against Martin Van Staden over there. Definitely worth keeping an eye on him in that one. I know Intudo Zondi, one of the guys on my Q&A this week mentioned him as maybe, PFL Africa next year. Maybe a couple of the guys on this card could be on that. He's a minus 250 favorite. Then we have Brave. So Mohamed Makayev had an opponent, and the opponent has changed. And actually, they have betting for his new opponent. So his new opponent is Joao Vincent, who's minus 2,000. Sorry, plus 2,000. Muhammad Ankalaev is minus 10,000. I don't think I've ever seen that in MMA. Again, is that worth backing? So I'll be honest, it was only announced just before I'm recording this, so I haven't seen it yet. So interesting we'll see it on that. But that's the big fight from over there, I suppose. Cage Warriors have a good card as well. The Teddy Stringer fight was the main one I was talking about in the preview for this week. He's minus 500 against a plus 333 Darren Smith. Darren Smith is a live dog there, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm surprised as well to see the Ryan Lilly minus 450, or sorry, plus 450, minus 800 against Damon Wilson. You know, this Lilly's not a bad fighter, and you know, maybe that's worth taking a look at. The other, you know, I think the main event. I think I said the main event was the Teddy Stringer fight, but I think it's the Anthony Corzo fight. He's a minus 1,400, big favorite there. So interesting. CFF seed in as well. Have a card over there. Eric Nolan minus 450 plus 300 for his opponent there. So you can take a look at that. Invicta then. Jennifer Maia, Talida Bernardo. Maya is the favorite, minus 250, and I think that's rightly so. Bernardo plus 175. Valeska Machado minus 333 favorite. I watched a bit of a opponent for that preview, and I do like Machado in that. And that price, maybe if you're throwing in, parlay this week, maybe throwing in Valeska Machado in there would be a good one as well. The rest of the UFC. We talked about the straight up price for the main event. Straight up price for the co-main event. Quarantillo's just about the fair, minus 155. Cub Swanson plus 135. Manel Cape and Bruno Silva. I avoided that one like the plague. You never know with Manel Cape, but he's a big favorite. Minus 350. Silva plus 295. The Cape knockout price plus 250. You know, if I was going for a bet in it, I probably would go for that one, but I don't like betting on Cape. I don't like betting on him. I like Adrian Yanez as the underdog here. I'm plus 180 against Daniel Marquez, minus 218. Michael Johnson, Adam and Aitzar. I'll be honest, Aitzar is one of the guys I written down as well, at plus 180. Not that I think that much of him, and I think Michael Johnson is a better fighter than Adam and Aitzar, but Michael Johnson, one fight he shows up, the next fight he doesn't show up. You never know with him. Aitzar's not the biggest wrestler in the world, but has he enough to take Michael Johnson now? Maybe push him against the cage for a while, win a decision? Maybe. So if I was backing someone on that at plus 180, I always like Sean Woodson. I think he's a good price there, minus 150. Miles Johns plus 205 against Felipe Lima, minus 265. You know, I might. Do you know what? I might be wrong on all these, but I might go for all the underdogs. Davy Grant is an underdog in a couple of places here as well against Roman Tavares. And one bet I really like, Josephine Knudsen. She's a really good prospect coming through, minus 238. I think that's probably a better price than you'll get. That you'll get in a lot of places for that. So there you go. A lot of bets this weekend, a lot of events this weekend, and those are my top 5. So just to recap, Alexander Luster plus 200, Colby and Buckley goes to decision, minus 135. The co-main event, Cobb and Billy goes to decision, minus 105. Did I say Colby and Buckley goes to decision, minus 135? Alvarez wins in round 1 or 2, plus 102, and then Petrino wins in round 2, plus 450. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. Please bet responsibly, and we'll see you all next time.